Ask your doctor about once weekly Trulicity.
Welcome back. Joining us from Gotham City, Republican media consultant and strategist Patrick Griffin, who is currently an undecided voter regarding Donald Trump, his party's candidate. And in Washington, D.C., Ben LaBolt, a Democratic strategist, former campaign press secretary for President Obama, and a big supporter of Hillary Clinton. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Ben LaBolt, if Hillary Clinton asked you for one piece of advice going into the debate, what would you tell her?
Well, I would tell her that she needs to hold Donald Trump accountable in the same way that she's being held accountable in this election. People are still treating Donald Trump like a celebrity host who a different standard applies to during this campaign. She should make clear that if the moderator doesn't ask him questions that are just as tough on foreign policy and domestic policy, that she raises those questions directly to him.
Pat Griffin, if Donald Trump called you and said, Pat, what am I doing well that I should bring to the debate, what would you tell him?
I would tell him decide which Donald Trump is going to show up, Mark. Is it Dr. Jekyll or is it Mr. Hyde? What kind of performance does he want to make that night? Hillary Clinton shows up usually acting like Tracy Flick from my favorite movie, Election. She can spell every nation in Africa backwards, but she's not good at connecting. I think one of the reasons Donald Trump is still in this thing is it's a change election, and he has to consistently remind people he is the candidate of change, something she can never, ever be.
So, Pat, let me ask you to flip this question around and ask you what you think the one thing or the most important thing is that Donald Trump needs to avoid doing. What would be the biggest mistake he could make in the debate on Monday?
You know, I think the problem is, John, that Donald Trump is going to be whichever Donald Trump he's comfortable being. We've seen him in debates before. We've seen this guy perform. He kind of likes this. I think if this thing devolves into a food fight between both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, it's a lot like that traffic wreck on the highway. People are going to stop and see the wreck. Nobody hangs around much to watch it get cleaned up. The problem for Trump is to convince people he is presidential, but at the same time, he is a candidate that will change things in Washington. That's fundamentally one of the reasons Hillary Clinton can't get off the runway here. She's a terrible candidate, exactly the wrong time, and she's doing way too much, sort of policy wonking than she is connecting. Trump's got to connect, and he's got to convince people he's prepared for the big chair at the big desk.
Ben, I ask you the same question. If you were working with Hillary Clinton, I know you're not, what would you counsel her to avoid in the course of Monday? What's the biggest mistake she could make or the biggest trap she could be lured into?
Well, having worked in the last presidential, I think where Mitt Romney lost the second two debates was in that he talked to the moderator instead of the audience back home. And by litigating rules and follow-ups with the moderator, instead of looking directly at the camera and telling to the American people what she's going to do to get the economy moving again for average people, that would be an enormous mistake.
All right. Do you think she has a risk if she gets drawn into a too personal confrontation with him? The kind of, the getting down in the mud with the pig and, you get dirty, the pig likes it?
Well, I think Donald Trump is not a typical candidate. She's not going to play on his level. He's made clear that he's willing to get personal, not only about her, but about the moderator. Yeah. And that's certainly unconventional. But that's where I think she has to turn to the audience back home, outline her vision for the country, and also use Donald Trump's words against him.
Right.
Pat, the Republican Senate candidates, including Kelly Ayotte in your state of New Hampshire, are all doing pretty well in most of the battleground Senate contests. Why do you think that is, and what's your prognosis on whether Republicans will keep the majority?
Quickly, let me just say this, Mark. I don't think we have to worry about Donald Trump acting like Mitt Romney in terms of rules. I don't think I'd worry much about that. With regard to the Senate seats, as Trump has made this a little closer in a couple of states, the environment, the meteorological sort of ring around this race has gotten better for Senate Republicans. If we look at guys like Rob Portman, he's done a very good job early on pushing himself away from this Trump meteorological force at the top of the ticket. But in all of these other places, as the large sort of environment gets better, these Republican Senate candidates have been able to sort of find a way to wedge themselves away from Trump and also make the generic sort of turnout for these elections look better for Republicans. So I think that in many of these cases, the better the top of the ticket does, the better it does down ticket, and these races are tightening up. There's more and more money coming in. Republican Senate candidates are raising more than ever before. I think these races suddenly look way more competitive in places we didn't think they would be just a few weeks ago.
Ben, rattle off the states you think your party's going to win to take back the majority.
Well, I would start with Illinois. That's at the top. I then go to Wisconsin. We're in a very strong position in Pennsylvania. I do think we'll win New Hampshire. The poll there had Ayotte down 2 today. Florida's really tight. Some of these races are coming onto the map that we didn't even anticipate. The fact is Mitch McConnell rushed to endorse Donald Trump. You know what you're going to get with these Senate candidates if you reelect Republicans to the Senate.
So your list got you pretty close to the majority, but not all the way there. Sounds like you're saying it's not a sure thing Democrats are going to take the Senate back.
Well, I would never say that. I mean, I've been in some really tight races. We thought we were going to win that came down to the wire. It all comes down to turnout. It really comes down to the turnout of the Obama coalition. If you voted for the president the last 2 times, if you believe that we need to continue on our progress of providing health care access to people, of getting the economy moving for working people again, you saw wages go up in a big way for the first time in a long time. This is an election you need to vote to, and again, I don't think Democrats should get complacent.
Pat, let me ask you the question, the kind of question we've been asking for months and months, which is about kind of how Republicans are feeling about Donald Trump. It seems like part of the reason why he closed the gap with Hillary Clinton a bit in the polling is that Republicans have come home. How solid is that Trump now has kind of reassured most of the members of his party? Is it solid, or are they still a flight risk?
Well, there are still some folks out there, I think, that have reservations about Trump, John. But the key to this thing is Trump has an opportunity on Monday night to convince people in this country that he is capable of being president. It's not just attacking Hillary Clinton. We know Donald Trump can do that because we saw him do that to 17 other Republicans. I think his challenge is to remind people again and again and again that Hillary Clinton is the poster child for everything wrong with Washington. She has, after all, been there almost as long as the Washington Monument. So that helps Trump. I think one of the other problems Hillary has is trying to convince people that she can be something other than a creature of Washington. That's the dynamic in this race right now, and I think Trump's big opportunity here, and I say big opportunity, is to behave himself, no checking, and to try to make not every single point. Hillary Clinton is a better debater. She has won this thing already in terms of expectations. Trump needs to show up, be substantive enough, and make sure that he makes the case for change or more of the same. That's what's on the ballot.
Okay, Pat, not quite almost as long as the Washington Monument. That's not quite accurate. Ben, real quick, other than the fact that Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama, why is she having so much trouble getting enthusiasm out of the Obama coalition that you mentioned before?
Well, I think for a lot of people, like young voters, they tune in late. They tune in post-Labor Day. They're back in school. They're looking at the race. They need to be motivated. You've seen people like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, others who are fighting for the same issues that Hillary are for, go out and get younger voters excited. People are familiar with her. She's been in public life for a long time. But now the audience is tuning into the debates and the choice. And I think if she can convince people not only of her qualifications, but the fact that Donald Trump is unsteady and dangerous and would upset world order with that audience, not only will she win the debate, she'll win the election.
Okay, Ben LeBold, Pat Griffin, thank you both. Coming up, we're going to check in on some new polling data regarding high-income voters.